Skechcraft is recorded in front of a live internet audience and supported by listeners like you. Please be sure to leave a review on iTunes, like and share our Facebook page, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. All links can be found at sketchcraft.com. That's Skechcraft, C-R-A-F-T, the name of the podcast, .com. Remember, every little bit counts, and it all helps to grow the show. Thanks. Welcome to Skechcraft, the podcast for art, games, and process junkies. I'm Rob Duenas, full-time illustrator and graphic artist Esquire. This is an unedited podcast, which will probably contain strong language, so listener discretion is advised. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Skechcraft, the podcast for art, games, and process junkies. My very first ever Kickstarter cast. I am Rob Duenas, graphic artist, illustrator, and host of Skechcraft. So you're listening to my first Kickstarter cast. I call it Rob Fack, or who the freak am I? Who am I? Who is Rob Duenas? So I haven't done a Rob Fack before. I'm going to explain to you a little bit about who I am. I'm going to assume that you're listening to this because you're checking out the Kickstarter page and you're wondering, who's this guy painting things and why should I care? So my name is Rob Duenas. My middle name's Alan, so I tend to spell my name rad a lot, so it's pretty cool. And I'm an illustrator. I make, for a living primarily right now, I make my living in T-shirts, doing graphic design and illustration for major licensed properties like Marvel, DC and Lucasfilm, Lego, Sony, Paramount, Peanuts, things like this. I got my start doing that in 2005, working for a company called Mad Engine, and that's started working on Marvel shirts and West Coast Choppers, things like that. I don't know a damn thing about making T-shirts at the time. I was actually still in school at the time, and I had been working in print for about 3 or 4 years at the time, and I had just transferred to a print house, and I hated it. I absolutely hated it, and I wanted out. I was completely done with print. I got into print because I wanted to know how to print my artwork when I went to cons and stuff better, and to know how to control all that because I thought it was horrible. But after 3 or 4 years of doing print, I had pretty much done everything you could do and was fed up. So I had to get a more creative job. I tried everything I could do. And a friend of mine took a freelance thing cleaning up storyboards for the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cartoon that was out in 2004. He knew I was a big fan of turtles, and he had sort of shirked the deadline and ran into a overnight situation where he needed help. And being that he sort of valued my perspective skills, asked me to come in and draw a lot of background things like cars and things like that they didn't want to draw. So I used that as a way to get an interview at the t-shirt company that he drew for at the time. So the interview basically got me my job there. And in 2005, I started learning how to make t-shirts, and that was a crazy-ass experience for about a year. Learned all about iconography, how to draw text, how to use the path tool and Photoshop. Everything I had this basically is like starting my whole career over again. But at that time, and a little bit before 2005, I had met a man named Adam Kogan, who is a game designer in video games, and he worked on games like Deadhead Fred and a bunch of other stuff, and in the last Bad Dudes game that came out. Anyhow, so he had asked me if I would like to draw some stuff that he was writing. He was putting together some comic books, and he did this book called Villains, and he had a couple different ideas. We're going to do this one called Family Vacation, something like that. It was going to be sort of like fun family vacation kind of thing with a lot of fantasy and stuff. And that kind of fell through, but we pitched that at the 2005 Comic-Con. In 2006, we started pitching a book called Mosaic, and we sold it to Image Comics in 2006. And so I was going to start my big career in comics finally. And that deal fell through because Adam got into some major deadlines and couldn't finish writing the scripts, and then Image sort of changed hands from Jim Valentino to Eric Larson, and and it was just a big clusterfuck. So that kind of went away. And in 2007, it sort of morphed. Right, that next Comic-Con, I met back up with Adam and some of his brothers, and he was friends with some guys at Ape Entertainment, and they liked my work. They saw a Mosaic and asked me to draw a book called Monstrates that they're putting together with screenwriter Kevin Grevioux, who created the Underworld movies and starred in them too. So in the upcoming I, Frankenstein movie coming out this year. So that was going to, again, be my second. Okay, now I will be a comic book artist. And I drew a 0 issue for them and finished the first issue, but that sort of fell through too because there's a whole slew of reasons for that. I would love to say that it was my fault, but the fact of the matter was it really wasn't. It's just that's a case where the person who created it and the people who published it had a real big disagreement over what that property should be, and I took no sides in it. I agreed on both sides and said that they should both figure it out because I really thought the property could be sort of my interpretation of a Ninja Turtles meets Transformers kind of thing. It could be like an action figure line, and I was really, really interested in developing something like those properties I grew up with. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. So in 2008, while I'm still working in t-shirt companies, I got an offer at that Wizard World. I got seen at that Wizard World and then got an offer from a magazine called Play Magazine, which was a video game magazine headed by a man named Dave Halverson that I had known for years. He's got created Game Fan magazine back in the 90s, and then he did Gamers Republic for a few years, and then created Play Magazine. And he was trying to break out of video game journalism to create a Death Jr. comic book series that would also be the basis for the next video game, because he was friends with the guys that created Death Jr. So he got the rights to do it. And he hired me, gave me a nice upfront check, so everything was on the up and up. And we announced the Death Jr. and the Cryogenic Storm at the 2008 Comic-Con, took pre-orders, and he was going to come in and hand me the scripts at Comic-Con, and I was going to get started. And I never saw scripts for Death Jr. I never saw scripts for Death Jr. That was a good learning lesson for me, to never agree to draw a comic book unless the script is done. Yeah, so that drug out 6 months, and I was running out of the money that they gave me. So I gave Dave an ultimatum in the beginning of 2009. I basically went up to there and said, look, either you put me on payroll at Play Magazine, I'll draw anything you want. Because at the time he was trying to get me to draw art for the interiors or maybe a cover, and he was like, I'll trade you game stuff, because he didn't want to pay per piece. I said, look, why don't you just give me a salary? And I'll draw whatever the hell you want for the magazine. And then as you sort of come up with these pages, because he was kind of coming up with like a page or a paragraph at a time, I'll draw what you put together, and then we can sort of tag team back and forth. So you'll get art assets in every issue for, not for free, but I mean, you'll get them without being like sort of raked over the coals by it. And then two, we'll get the comic done, and you don't have to worry about paying me for the comic from here on out. I'll just take money off the sales. So they agreed to that, and I became their staff artist at Play Magazine, and that was a lot of fun, actually. That was for about a year. That was the best job I probably ever had. I basically just drew video game characters from home, drew a lot of critters and did covers, really sort of got a lot of time to up my ability. I also was actively still trying to put together Monstrates at the time, so I was still sort of working with that and reshaping the look of that a bit. But then tragedy struck yet again in the end of 2009, and Play Magazine went out of business overnight. like I don't know how that happened, and to this day, neither really does Dave. He had sort of been removed from the financials of that company, and the people who were in charge of that just never told anybody that they were running out of money. So it basically all crashed when they couldn't afford to print their 100th issue, which I had already drawn the cover for. So in October or November of that year, it went out overnight, and I was jobless. Now, I took that December off because I had the money to do it, and figured, well, in January, I guess I'll go back to t-shirts, because I still had friends in the industry and they wanted me back. But Dave hit me up and asked me if I'd be interested in being the staff artist again at a new game magazine he was going to do, and he was going to relaunch Game Fan from the 90s, modern. And I said, hell yeah, I'd love to do that. I mean, worked at Play great. He said that basically, the idea was that it would, be like half the salary I was making before for the first 3 months. And then as the ad money comes in, we'll get bumped up. Everything will be great. So I said, no problem. And then after a month or so, no word, I was like, hey, what's going on, man? Because I need a job. And it turned out that the people that were supposed to be laying out the whole magazines disappeared. Now, he told me, I'm being honest about this, he told me that they couldn't handle making GameFan, that it was a lot of work, and Play was very simple, and GameFan required a lot more effort, and he wanted to know if I could take their layouts and make them look like GameFan, because he knew I was really good at Photoshop. So I did a test of that, and he thought that looked really great, and so then that was going to be the thing, that there would be an art director, and then I would sort of be this guy who'd go over his stuff in Photoshop. That guy quit, and basically Dave asked me if I wanted to do the whole issue myself, and promised like a crazy amount of money, right? And I'm like, all right, I'll give that a shot. That'd be kind of fun, make my own game magazine. And that really sucked. That was actually that's to this day, that's the hardest thing I've ever done in my art career ever. It really was. I had to figure out in a month how to make a whole magazine like GameFan by myself. And I did it wrong. I blew up the issue left and right. I made it the wrong size, made it too tall at one point, made the fonts all wrong, had to rebuild the whole issue twice. And then there was this whole movie side to it too that this editor-in-chief guy had pitched to him, and all those assets came in wrong, and that get made in a night. So the first issue of that GameFan was pretty bad. But the third issue, I had a run of it. That's 2010. I had sort of figured out by that summer how to get it to work, but still no money. I really wasn't being paid much. I don't know why I kept doing it, but I was getting the opportunity to draw a lot, so I was kind of suffering. I kind of figured Dave would work it out. I mean, he always managed to work it out. I've been following him for a long time. So what I did is I started this podcast, Skechcraft, in 2010 as a way to sort of like vent about working alone and starving. So, so also in 2010, to sort of help pay the bills, I started doing cover art for a company called Big Dog Inc. And Big Dog Inc. is an independent comic book company that's getting pretty big now. This guy Tom I met at Wizard World started his books at, and he's been doing the Oz stuff and everything. I made good friends with Tom, and I was doing covers for his main title called Penny for Your Soul, and then he pitched a book to me called Oz that I told him I thought was fantastic, but I couldn't draw the interiors to because there's no way an Oz is taken off. So Big Dog Inc. was really good to me, and I sort of started doing covers for them in 2010. And fast forward to 2011, I left GameFan. I left GameFan in 2011 because I was starving, and I was working harder than I've ever worked, and I didn't get paid for an issue. And now I've never really gotten too mad about that. I think Dave means well. He never intentionally went out to rob me or keep me from being paid. I just think in the interest of GameFan magazine, they sort of feel that at some point it's going to work, and I just don't see how the industry has changed so much. I hope they do. But anyhow, I had to leave GameFan after 7 issues, and I went back to T-shirts, mostly because the company that I started at, Mad Engine, I still had the Marvel license and was getting ready to do all the Avengers T-shirts for the movies, because they had the movies, they had Avengers and Iron Man. So I wanted to go work on Avengers T-shirts and get a regular paycheck again. So I went back to Mad Engine at the end of 2011. Also in 2011, I started doing covers for Richie Rich over at Ape Entertainment. I did 8 of them, and the last one being a gatefold cover, which was kind of fun to do. And that was a lot of fun. And you know what's weird about the Richie Rich stuff is I got a lot of shit for that at conventions. I went to a convention, and there were some guys who'd asked me, these guys who do the zombie cheerleader books were wanted me to do covers for them. And I was cool with that, but I was doing this Richie stuff, and I couldn't do Big Dog Richie and them and GameFan at the time. And they were like, well, why are you doing Richie Rich covers? And I'm like, well, because it's fucking different, man. I do these really busty, sexy babes. And there's an adventurous side to me. I'm a big kid in some ways, and I love the Muppets, and I love the stuff I sort of grew up with, like Sesame Street, and I love, Ninja Turtles and Mysteries and Indiana Jones and these kinds of things. So the opportunity to sort of invoke that into Richie Rich and take it beyond this little retarded kid in a tuxedo, but add this sense of adventure and spirit of fun was what I had interested me with it, what I thought was really awesome about it. And I sort of feel that, that kid properties in this country aren't taken seriously anymore. Like, if you say, hey, I'm going to work on the kid version of this, whether it's, I don't know, man, like Panda, Kung Fu or some shit, it sort of has to be drawn in a crude manner. And I don't agree with that. Even as a kid, I never really cared for crudely drawn coloring books. I rather would have had the line art to actual comic books and color that stuff. So I felt like, hey, if I could really sort of do that, that would be fun. So it was just weird. I got some shit for that, but I enjoyed working on it. It was a lot of fun. And then in 2012 really sort of changed things for me. How do I describe this? So I have always wanted to learn how to paint. I just never had the balls to do it in a way, or I'm going to be honest. So I started messing with watercolors in 2009 for about a month and then gave up. In 2010, a little bit more, gave up. 2011, started doing these little miniature like commissions for like $10 to kind of get better at it. But in 2012, I felt I was good enough to like start doing like little print sets with it. And I came up with this thing called like saucy style. It's a way of painting of like some drips and stuff. It's really more style over rendering capability, but it looks kind of fun to me. It's graphic and I enjoy it. So I did these Avengers things, right? And this is what the Kickstarter is all about. In 2012, I did these Avengers things to sort of promote, well, I mean, not to promote the movie, but sort of get in the spirit of doing the film, because I had actually entered the Ghostwriter contest the earlier in 2012 and won that. Actually won like second place for that, and they gave me like $600 or something. It's pretty cool. And so I thought, well, I'll do these prints and I'll be able to take them to Tucson Con or Phoenix Con, and that'd help pay for the trip, because going to Comic Cons, I don't get paid to go. I don't get a free car. I don't get the table for free. It costs me a lot of money to go to a con, about $1,000 at the minimum to go to a convention. So where does that money come from? It comes from this stuff. So I printed like 40 of them and sold out. And I came back from that convention with a completely different mindset. Like, the whole time I've been doing covers, I made about, let's say on an average of $200 to do a cover, to draw and color it. That's high. You could cut that in half a lot. So especially Richie Rich, that didn't pay much. So that's like $800 to draw and color 8 covers, right? Well, you know what I mean? Like I can do a lot more with just commissions and selling prints than I can to ever do print, real like published work. And I can't believe that the industry is set up that way. Like, it's really strange. Like, I don't know how it turned like that, other than to say that people don't spend a lot of money buying comic books anymore. Maybe they spend on video games or something. But regardless of the reasons, there just came a point in 2012 where we're doing fan art and selling copies of it, and the originals as well, just netted me 10 times more than doing actual freelance. And it was a hard thing to sort of like come to terms with, because I had always wanted to be a comic book artist, but it's not paying to be one, is what I'm trying to say. Like there's like a 0.2% amount of people out there that make a good living doing it. And that's where they're the same people. You'll notice, like, wow, these people last a while. Well, there's not a whole lot of them. And I am not one of those people. I don't, like, what I'm talking about, making some decent money, it's not making money I can live off of by any measure. But it's enough to cover going to a con and buying me some art supplies to make some more, sort of break even in a way, and to not come out of my personal bank account. So I have to have a real job. I mean, I know guys that they haven't done interior work for 10 years and they make $500 to draw you a fucking picture of the Huntress, so I don't get that. But this Avengers thing really sort of changed my mindset. And then in 2012, in August of 2012, imaginefx made me Artist of the Month in their issue 85. And that was like a really interesting thing. Like, that month, in August of 2012, probably should have been the month of my career. Should have been the thing where I was like, oh man, this is the greatest ever. I'm Artist of the Month in imaginefx. And instead it sort of like hit a rail, because the artwork that they were really impressed with in that magazine, my digital work, was art that I really had to fight to get made. The angel cover, not as much, but even still so, like to do it required me to sort of like convince Tom to let me draw and color my stuff, and he has to put up with how long it takes me, and to do sort of this sort of impressionistic background stuff. It was different than what his other artists were doing. He's never against it. Tom was always pretty cool. But the Enslaved piece, I had to fight for that. Namco didn't want me to do it. Dave didn't want me to do it. It was supposed to be the cover to issue 4 of Game Fan. They didn't want to do it. And I fought to make it the cover to Girls of Gaming. And then he wanted to cancel it because they weren't going to pay any money for it. And I fought to keep it as a secondary cover while they took money for this piece of shit, generic shit I had to cobble together for this anime online game. So, like, it's sort of like I sort of realized that last year that the ideas that I've been coming up with, the level of quality that I want to produce at, is not being encouraged, appreciated, or monetarily respected by the industry I want to do it for. On any level, at all, ever, for me. It's just not. So I took a break in the last 3 months of last year. I stepped away because I wasn't certain if I even wanted to be a part of this anymore. This is like my mind, my whole world is, the whole world that I know now is not what I grew up with comics being. And then so at the beginning of this year, I decided that, okay, I'm going to get back into it, but I'm going to really get rid of freelance altogether. And I'm going to just focus on things that I want to do. And that hasn't been easy for me. Like, imaginefx hit me back up to do some stuff. Fantasy FX magazine hit me to do some stuff. And I finally had to just kind of like stop doing that, to the point where then I said, well, it'd be really cool to kind of get a game magazine made. And I was doing this thing called Game Cave. And I put it together really in the last half of last year, and it kind of fell through, and I was going to redo it this year. I even did a couple podcasts on it. And unfortunately, I've just sort of given up trying to make video game magazines. I don't believe that the medium is respected by the community at large, and the amount of effort it takes for the amount of money in return, I don't want to be bothered with. So where does that leave me now? Why am I at Kickstarter? What's going on in 2013? I'm going to briefly touch up on this and then move this over to the other podcast, Rob Future. But basically, what I've decided to do is to start my own company. And I'm incorporated and everything, got it done. And I'm going to produce my own comic book work. I'm going to use Kickstarter as a platform to do this, because the thing that's always held me back from doing this is that it requires at least $18,000, somewhere between $10,000 and $20,000 of your own money to start your own comic company, because you have to have 2 or 3. If you have a 3-issue miniseries, you need to have the first 2 issues done. You have to go through Diamond. They have to approve it. You have to pay for, a big print run, distribution. They keep all the funds. The only money you really make is off back end stuff, or, very minuscule in return. It's very, very difficult to play that system. You end up in a little thing in the back of Diamond. You have to pay to be in there too. They have notes on your cover art, everything. I can't stand it. So I've stayed out of it. But with Kickstarter, I can basically print 500 copies of something, maybe 100 hardcovers, and sell out and go to do the next thing. And then when it's all done, make a trade paperback, kickstart that, and then keep it, in trade forever. And just sort of, do an issue, then do an issue, then do an issue, and do very low run Kickstarters. It's not hard. I mean, like 3,000, 3,500 here, 3,500 there, and be able to sort of, 1, have an audience to give something to sell something to, and 2, to promote. Because the thing out of all these things I just described to you, right? The T-shirts, Play Magazine, Game Fan, Big Dog, Ape, all these things, the one thing that's consistent, except for imaginefx, the one thing that's consistent out of all of them is that they do not promote me. They have no incentive to. It's not really their business to. I'm not known, I've done a lot of work, but no one knows who I am. And I'm 34 years old, and I'm getting pretty fucking tired of it. So the only way that I can fight this is to basically control my own image and to build an audience one-on-one, to not have anyone in between me and them, to not try to go through a publisher and play through the system and have to explain why my art was colored poorly, or why, I had to, this was for a rush, to just directly work for the fans. And then that does mean I'm going to have a day job, but I'm fine with that, because right now there is nothing more demotivating to me than some bullshit arbitrary deadline that a publisher comes up with for no reason, and they just want to impress themselves, or maybe because their printer gave them some bullshit thing they have to do. I am tired of fighting fires for other people. I don't mind fighting my own fires. I'll keep myself up day and night to do it. But that's because I'm motivated to make me win. I'm not motivated to make Big Dog Inc. or anybody else win. And it's not because they treated me wrong or anything like that. It's just because it hasn't helped me any. You know, those Avengers things went everywhere across the internet. I've done 20 covers in the last 2 years or 3 years, and I don't get any work or recognition for those covers. But the stuff that I've done on the internet has gotten me stuff everywhere. So I need to leverage fan art to sort of also help promote original stuff. So the Kickstarter is a way to take something that I've already done. I've already had these Avengers things. I did a very limited run, and to offer them one more time as a way to, one, help promote, two, to help me get me used to making a Kickstarter campaign, because it requires a lot of little pieces and stuff. And I'm gonna show every little piece it took. I'm gonna offer a downloadable PSD. You can see all the little pieces I made, a package of some sort here in the next couple weeks. Show what it went. I'll go through the whole process. So that's basically it. That's who I am, all the way up till now. In the next cast, I'll explain to you in more depth, in depth, what I plan on doing and how I plan on doing it and why. So thanks. If you guys have any questions, please hit me up at rob@sketchcraft. That's the name of the podcast, craft.com. Please pick up a set of prints. All the stuff's right there on the Kickstarter. You can check it out. I'll have links to it too if you're getting to the podcast. It's pretty economical. Everything's already done, unless we hit the stretch goals, and there'll be some new art, but that's not really a big deal. I really appreciate your support, and I will see you all in the next cast. Bye.